Welcome to the healthiest half hour-ish anywhere on the internet today. Hi, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll, and you are watching the Exam Room Live, brought to you by the Physicians Committee. Appreciate you taking some time to join us here on Facebook and on YouTube and wanting to get healthy together. That is awesome. We've got a big show on tap today because we've got a lot of headlines, and we've got Dr. Vanita Rahman here. She is going to tell us all about a new study showing the importance of exercise in combating COVID-19. Dr. Rahman, so looking forward to getting to the bottom of this with you.
Thank you, Chuck. Really excited to be here.
And I'm excited also that you're going to be sticking around because we're going to open up the doctor's mailbag and we are going to take a whole host of questions. So if you're watching this and you're saying, hey, self, I've got some questions that I would love to ask the doctor, now is the time to go ahead and post that in the comment section. I promise you that we will be getting to as many as we possibly can by the end of the show. Are you ready? Because the exam room viewers, I mean, they really tend to ask some of the very best questions anywhere.
They do. They ask terrific questions. And you know what? They always challenge me, and I love it. So really looking forward to it.
Well, consider the challenge accepted. So we have a lot to get into today, but let's start with the headlines. Get you caught up with 5 things that you need to know for Tuesday, May 19th, 2020. As always, we start with a look at the coronavirus by the numbers. And the number of cases worldwide since the pandemic began is quickly now approaching 5 million, with 1.5 million of them here in the U.S., where the death toll is now beyond 90,000. It is expected to reach 140,000 by August. The New York and New Jersey region no longer has the highest rate of COVID-19 infections in the U.S. That grim distinction now belongs to the Navajo Nation, where the per capita infection rate stands at nearly 2.5% for the entire population. In contrast, New York's rate is just 1.8%, though both numbers are likely grossly underreported. Health officials with the Navajo Nation say residents are being tested at nearly 5 times the rate as the rest of the country, and minorities continue to be affected disproportionately, with African Americans and Latinos being ravaged by the virus. A new study is throwing cold water on the idea that warmer temperatures this summer will slow the spread of the coronavirus. The findings of a Princeton study point to the rapid spread of the virus in countries in the southern hemisphere, such as Brazil, where outbreaks began during warmer weather. The study's author says the effect of climate is only minimal because of the highly infectious nature of the virus. The group says leaving control measures in place, such as social distancing, is the best way to slow transmission. In lighter news, we have been talking a lot about the plant-based meat market and how it's just exploding in China. Well, the latest bang? Spam. Omni Foods is unveiling a vegan version of the iconic canned meat. The company says it has 40% fewer calories and half the fat of the original, as well as 60% less sodium. Word of caution, however. A single serving still has 16 grams of fat and has coconut oil as one of the primary ingredients. And finally, famed supermodel Elle Macpherson is vegan. Basically, the 56-year-old supermodel says she's keeping her diet as healthy as possible. Her daily menu includes 3 meals and a couple of snacks. She says she made the change to improve her skin, hair, and energy, but the supermodel is quite human when it comes to cravings, saying recently that she has a weakness for chocolate and cream pie. So, a challenge now to exam room viewers. Let's send her some good vegan options when it comes to chocolate. And if you just happen to have a vegan cream pie recipe, well, let's go ahead and send those her way as well. She is on Instagram at Elle Macpherson Official. And don't forget as well to drop your recipes and suggestions in the comment section here, because I'm sure that quite a few viewers would get a kick out of checking out what it is you've been snacking on. So let's get Elle Macpherson some help there. And I will tell you, Elle Macpherson, likely no stranger to exercise. And you really shouldn't be either, because new research is showing that getting your body moving may play an even larger role in our ability to fight COVID-19 than we previously thought. Here now to discuss the research and its implications is Dr. Vanita Rahman. Dr. Rahman, what does this study tell us here? I mean, should we be hitting pause on the show right now and going out for a run?
Well, I think we should always strive to exercise, Chuck. But let's talk about the evidence. So we'll pull up the presentation that I have here and go through some of the research data. So I'm really excited to share this because not only is it a really interesting information, but it's from my alma mater, University of Virginia. So I'll give a shout out to the Who's. But what the research team did there was they looked at the role of exercise in our health. And we all know that we need oxygen to breathe. Oxygen is essential. But certain forms of oxygen can be harmful to us. And these are called free radicals. They're unstable oxygen molecules. And what they do is, because they're so unstable, they try to stabilize themselves. And in the process, they cause damage to our tissues. And fortunately for us, we have a repair mechanism in place to prevent that damage. And one of those repair mechanisms involves this enzyme called extracellular superoxide dismutase. It's a mouthful. We'll just call it ECSOD for short. But as the picture here shows, what this enzyme does is it neutralizes the damage that these free radicals do. And it does this in all organs, our joints, our heart, our lungs, our kidneys, the liver, and even the eye. We know that these free radicals play a key role in the damage that occurs in many chronic diseases such as high blood pressure, heart failure, heart attacks, lung damage, lung disease. And this enzyme reduces it. So what does this all have to do with exercise? Well, when we exercise, our skeletal muscles produce more of this very helpful enzyme, ECSOD, and more of the enzyme means that more is available to neutralize these free radicals. So, let's talk a little bit about what this has to do with COVID-19. We've heard a lot about the acute respiratory distress syndrome, or ARDS. This is a very damaging series of events that occur in our lungs when we are exposed to certain infections or when we suffer from certain diseases. We don't completely know what causes it or how to prevent it, but we have some new information. ARDS has about a 40% mortality. And even before COVID-19, we were seeing about 75,000 annual deaths in the United States related to ARDS. And as far as COVID-19 goes, we know that about 3 to 17% of all patients with COVID-19 may develop ARDS. And this is where exercise comes in, because exercise increases the levels of this helpful enzyme, ECSOD. It can prevent and reduce the severity of ARDS. So this is really great news. And the next question is, how much exercise do we need? Well, according to the Health and Human Services, we should get about 150 to 300 minutes of moderate exercise, or 75 to 150 minutes of vigorous aerobic exercise. And we should get 2 strength training sessions every week. What is strength training? That's weight training or Pilates, anything where we're adding resistance in our exercise to build muscle. And how are we as Americans doing with this? Well, not so great. Only 23% of Americans are getting both the recommended amounts of aerobic and strength training exercise. And only 53% of Americans are getting the recommended aerobic exercise. So we're doing better with aerobic. About half of us are getting it, but only a quarter of us are getting both. And what's making this even more important is that as we've gone into social distancing, gyms are closed, people are concerned about exposure. So unfortunately, people are exercising even less. And study estimates are that exercise has decreased by about 32% in those who exercise regularly, and those who weren't exercising prior to the pandemic continue to not do so. Yet at the same time, our screen time has increased. And, people may wonder, well, how long does it take to lose those benefits of exercise? So even with a few weeks of inactivity, our oxygen uptake decreases, our blood volume decreases, and our muscle strength decreases. So, and it can take up to 6 weeks to regain what we lose in 2 weeks. So really important to stay active during this pandemic. And even though the gyms are closed and we need to practice social distancing, there are many ways that we can be active. And before we get to that, let's talk about the other health benefits of exercise. In general, it reduces mortality, reduces the risk of dementia, reduces the risk of cognitive decline. And this is so important. It improves our mood. Exercise is just a natural antidepressant, a natural anxiolytic. It just helps us feel so much better. And it's because of that adrenaline rush we get from it. And it reduces the risk of those comorbid conditions, such as high blood pressure, heart disease, cancer, diabetes, cholesterol, all of those things that we know increase the risk of complications with COVID-19. And it improves our bone health. So how can you incorporate exercise during this time of social distancing? Well, it's actually easier than you might think. The simplest thing is to go outside, go for a walk or go for a hike. If you're like jogging or running, those are great options. Biking. Or what about a game of badminton? You can play that with a family member that you're living with. It doesn't require much space. You can set that up in your yard or driveway or go to a public park and do it. At home, there are many ways to exercise using online resources such as yoga or Pilates, dancing. And Tai Chi can be really great. It's a low impact, low stress option. And of course, we can always get plenty of exercise taking care of our home and living space by cleaning or gardening. So it doesn't always have to be a structured exercise per se. So these are some ways that we can all stay active. And it's really important now more than ever that we stay active.
I'll tell you, I'm guilty as the next guy for not being as active as I should be during, this hunkering down phase. There have been days, Dr. Rahman, honestly, and I'm kind of ashamed to admit this. There have been days when I will, wake up and I'll immediately start working, putting together the live show. And then as soon as we wrap up here, I have to tape the podcast that drops the next day on Apple Podcast. And I'll look at the clock and I'll be like, I've been sitting for daggone near 10 hours and I haven't done anything. And like, that is the least healthy thing that I could possibly do to my body. But I'm not even thinking about it. And I think that a lot of people are kind of finding themselves in a similar situation right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so easy. And that's happened to me many a times. I start out with all the best intentions and then the whole day has gone by and I never made it for my walk or my bike ride. It's so important to really make an effort. And sometimes I have to send myself a reminder that, I need to do this today or I will not feel great about it the following day. So it takes some discipline, but it's also worth it for our health.
I'm not even joking when I say that I have started to put break time or exercise time in my daily calendar, just so I know not to fill that time with an interview or some other project. It's like, no, this time is dedicated to getting the body moving a little bit. It's super important because you're a doctor and it's even happening to you. So it can happen to anybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And it feels so good to exercise because we're feeling so isolated now. There's so much stress and anxiety about this pandemic, and we really need that exercise to lift our mood, to lift our spirit, and to even feel connected with other people walking by, even if it is from a distance. It just has so many benefits.
And it never ceases to amaze me how exercise and nutrition really go hand in hand in keeping a person healthy. They're, just so critically important, and one really goes with the other. And I think that right now we have a ton of questions from people who have just watched this presentation. They want to do a follow-up with that. And then they're probably wondering about, well, what should I be eating in my pantry right now? So you ready to open up the doctor's mailbag?
Let's do it. My favorite part.
All right, so you've got questions. Dr. Rahman has answers. Post yours in the comment section right now. We will get to as many as we possibly can by the end of the show. The first question comes to us from JLC. How do I only eat when I'm hungry? I love vegan food so much that I just keep eating, but I haven't lost any weight.
Yeah. You know, I think we're all in a bit of that situation right now. I know when I'm working and I need that break, I find myself, it's so easy to step into the kitchen and grab a snack. Um, it's so let's go back to the basics on this one. There's only one reason we should be eating, and that is for hunger. So if we're eating for reasons other than hunger, it's not about a physiological need. It's really about an emotional need. So it's really important to get in touch with that. Why did I have that snack? Why am I reaching for this? What is it that I really need right now? And a few quick things come to mind. Am I bored? Do I just need a break? Do I need to stretch? Do I need to distract myself? And then, or am I just tired? Do I need a pick me up? Am I feeling sad and anxious? And eating will help me feel better. So there's a list of things we can all go through and see what's really behind us reaching for that food. But what's great about this question is that our listener has this awareness that they are eating for reasons other than hunger. And I think that's the first step, is to know that. And then we can sort of troubleshoot and see what else is going on that we can address directly. So maybe instead of food, we go, walk our dog, or we go outside and just smell the air and just look at the flowers and come back in. So many ways to find a break during the day.
All right, next question comes to us from Joel on YouTube. Are avocados good or bad fat?
Yeah, well, they're generally good fat. So let's talk about this. There are 3 types of fats in our diet: saturated fat, unsaturated fat, and trans fats. Saturated fats and unsaturated fats are naturally found in our food. And saturated fats tend to be less healthy because they raise our cholesterol levels, they increase the risk of cardiovascular disease. Unsaturated fats are healthier, and a little bit of them are beneficial for us. The third kind, trans fat, is not naturally found in our food. It's manufactured by the food industry, and it really has no health benefits at all. It raises cholesterol levels, it increases the risk of heart disease. So we should avoid them completely. And fortunately, they're being used less and less by the food industry. Now, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
So where avocados come in is that they have a combination of both saturated and unsaturated fat. And so we should consume them, but in moderation, because too much of that will raise our cholesterol levels. It will lead to weight gain, and it will raise our blood sugar levels. So really important to moderate that amount. I say, depending on the size of the avocado, roughly 1/8 of an avocado is a serving size, which often is a lot less than we end up eating. So really important to be mindful of that.
Kind of a follow-up on that. Edigio on YouTube wants to know, can eating the salad with lots of vegetables make you gain weight?
Well, great question. It depends what's in the salad. So if it's just vegetables, probably unlikely. But if that salad has perhaps a lot of avocado in it, or a lot of nuts in it, or seeds, or if it has a rich dressing that's made with nuts or seeds, that could contribute to calories. Or does it have any fried ingredients in it? Or like, for instance, is fried tofu in it, or anything else that could be fried put in there. So a salad is really only as healthy as what's in it. If it's just vegetables that are raw, it's less likely. You would have to eat a lot to gain weight. But if it's got some of these other higher fat ingredients, then yes, that could contribute to weight gain.
Claudia, YouTube, writes, regarding iodine, how often do I need to eat sea vegetables to cover the daily requirement? I don't consume iodized salt.
Yeah, so let's talk about iodine. Iodine is an essential mineral that we need for our thyroid gland to produce thyroid hormone effectively. And when we don't get enough of it, we can't produce enough thyroid hormone, and the thyroid gland can become larger. It's what's called a goiter, and these goiters can be quite big. But in the US, this is less common because we iodize salt. I do recommend eating salt that's been iodized, or consuming salt with iodine, because even though sea vegetables may have some iodine, it's hard to know whether they have enough or if we're getting enough. So the safest thing would be to introduce some iodized salt in your diet. And if you're worried about this at all, you can always see your physician and they can check your thyroid hormone levels. And if they're fine, then that means you're getting enough iodine in your diet.
Yogi99 on YouTube. I'm diabetic and bread spikes my blood sugar. What can I do?
So, really important question for diabetics. I would want to know a little bit more about the bread that you're eating. What's on it, for instance? Is it, if it's got any kind of nut butter on it or any of the other high fat foods like avocado or olives? We know that fat in the food can increase blood sugar. I see that you're writing here that you eat with many legumes. So legumes are generally low in fat, but again, it depends how they're prepared. For example, hummus, which can be really healthy, can also be high in fat. Commercially prepared hummus is pretty high in olive oil, pretty high in tahini. So if someone's having bread with that, I can see their blood sugar level spiking. So I think it'd be important to dig a little bit deeper and see what's going on that bread. Is there any vegan meat or vegan cheese going on there, which could sometimes raise blood sugar? So a bit more, just really looking at whether it's high fat foods or low fat foods that are being consumed with the bread.
This is a great question from Melvin that I think more people find themselves in this situation than we realize. He writes, what are the diet changes related to having limited access to fresh food?
What are the diet changes related to limited access to fresh food?
So maybe some ideas of ways that he can still eat a healthy diet, even though he may not have access to those types of foods.
Yeah. So I'm assuming you mean fresh fruits and vegetables, but certainly things like whole grains and legumes, which are sold as dry goods. You can buy, they have a very long shelf life. You can keep them in your pantry and then prepare them, boil them, season them with different things. Those could be a great option. And, you can make a whole meal with just legumes, from appetizer to the main course to even dessert. I see here diet changes relate to limited access to grocery food chain and fresh food. So, this is a common problem depending on certain communities where there may not be easy access to fresh fruit and vegetables. And at that point, some fruits and vegetables will keep longer than others in the fridge. And then some have a much shorter shelf life. So like potatoes, sweet potatoes, onions, those things tend to last a while, but things like green leafy vegetables have a much shorter shelf life. So really trying to get those fruits. Things like apples can last for a while in the fridge, but bananas obviously won't. So I would try to experiment with that a little bit, and then sticking to more of the dry fruit, the dry foods like legumes and whole grains. That might be a good option there too. And there's always frozen fruit, which is just as healthy if it's just fruit. I generally don't recommend canned fruit because it tends to have a high amount of sugar syrup in it. So frozen fruit might be another option, or frozen vegetables for that matter. They are just as nutritious as fresh.
All right, Rose checking in for the lovers of leafy greens. I just heard vitamin K can be K1 or K2. What is the difference between the two? I know that we can get vitamin K from leafy greens, but do they contain both versions?
Well, you've got me there, Rose. This is one I'm going to have to look up now. I am really curious. I have not heard of this. So I will hope to get back to you next time with this.
Fair enough.
But the important thing is to keep consuming those leafy green vegetables, because most of us aren't getting enough of them. And it's really important to get those in.
This one comes from Kwame. What are your thoughts on multivitamins? My doctor told me to take a multivitamin, but lots of plant-based doctors say you only need B12 and vitamin D.
Yeah, well, I tend to agree with them. Really important about the vitamins and supplement industry is it's not regulated by the FDA. And what that means is that drug manufacturers do not have to prove that a vitamin or supplement is helpful. They do not have to prove that it's safe in order to market it, which is a bit of a scary prospect, right? So we really have to be careful about the claims that are made on these vitamin bottles, because we don't know how accurate they are. And sometimes these products can be harmful. One thing that we do know is that we all need vitamin B12, and I absolutely recommend everybody take that. Vitamin D, I recommend you work with your healthcare provider. They can check your levels and advise you on whether you need to supplement or not. But as for the others, we can really get them through our diet, and we don't necessarily need to invest our money or time in taking supplements. I'd say save it for the healthy food instead.
Looks like Brittany is in the middle of a weight loss journey. Congratulations, Brittany. That's awesome. She writes on YouTube, can a person who has lost a significant amount of weight but still has more to lose, doesn't have any pre-existing conditions, eats plant-based, and works out regularly, can they still be at high risk for COVID-19?
Yeah, really great question. The CDC has said that obesity is a risk factor for a more complicated course with COVID-19. But if someone is on their way to losing weight, that's the most important thing. So I congratulate you, Brittany, on doing that and taking care of your health. It's really important to continue to do that. But where on that spectrum does the risk go up? My sense is probably the higher the BMI, the greater the risk. So the more we can get into that normal range, the lower a risk will be. But I don't think we can give an absolute number beyond that.
Deborah on Facebook, a follow-up to what you were talking about with the avocados. How can we figure out the best amount of nuts or avocados that we should eat in our diet?
Yeah. So I use this rule of thumb that has worked well for me and for patients I've worked with. I tell people to limit their intake of high-fat foods to 1 to 2 tablespoons a day. So what I mean by that is 1 to 2 tablespoons of all the high-fat foods combined. So whether it's nuts or nut butter or avocado or olives or seeds, I don't mean 2 tablespoons of nut butter and 2 tablespoons of tahini and 2 tablespoons of avocado. I mean all together. And that seems to work well. And it usually gives us the essential fatty acids we need without leading to weight gain.
Here's a pretty good question from Stephanie. How many varieties of plant food should we strive to eat every week?
As many as you can, Stephanie. So roughly try to get 4 to 5 fresh fruits a day, 4 to 5 vegetables a day, 2 or 3 servings of legumes, and 4 to 5 whole grains. And don't beat yourself up if you don't meet those every day. The idea is to keep things changing. And if you are really into bananas today, go for it. Maybe tomorrow you'll crave apples instead. But over the course of a week, just try to sample as many different types of foods as you can.
Question from YouTube. If I exercise daily for an hour and eat plant-based, will I improve bone density?
Yeah, so really important question. So there are 2 questions here. How does exercise impact bone density, and how does plant-based diet impact bone density? Let's start with exercise. When we're talking about improving bone density, it's important to do weight-bearing exercise. So weight-bearing exercise is any time that we're lifting weight while exercising, or when we're supporting our own body weight. So for example, walking or running or hiking, we're supporting our own body weight. On the other hand, something like swimming or biking, we're not supporting our body weight. So that's not a weight-bearing exercise. It doesn't mean it doesn't have health benefits. It's just, it's not as beneficial to our bones. So it's good to, mix things up. And then strength training is really important to improve bone density. Lifting with weights or using our own body as a resistance can help. So doing a combination of the 2 is going to be key to improving bone density. And then as far as diet goes, we know that avoiding animal-based foods and sticking with plant-based foods improves bone density, it reduces the risk of fracture. So you're doing all the right things there.
Great question coming your way from Ronald on Facebook. Do I have to avoid eating fruit in excess? I will sometimes eat 3 bananas in one sitting. I thought I should just avoid refined sugars.
Yeah. Well, Ronald, I don't think there's anything harmful about eating 3 bananas in a sitting if you're hungry for it. Fruits are really healthy, and people sometimes worry that the sugar that's naturally found in fruits could raise their blood sugar, but we know that doesn't happen. I would say this, if you're hungry and you like the fruit and you're enjoying it, go for it. However, if you're eating because you're not hungry, then I wouldn't do it, because then you're sort of consuming unnecessary calories. And if you're trying to lose weight or something, that could be an issue. But otherwise, enjoy those bananas. They're delicious and really nutritious.
This one comes to us from Marianne. Is tofu recommended? It's a processed food, and I know that I should try to keep processed foods to a minimum.
Yeah. So a really good question. Tofu is processed. We take soybeans, we ferment them, and then we puree them, and we get this food that we call tofu. It is processed, but it's minimally processed. And you always, when you look at processed food, you look at what else is going into it. When tofu is made, it's usually not made with added sugars or added fats or added sodium. So those all are really important. Whereas a lot of conventional processed food is rich in added fat, sugar, sodium, and that's what makes it unhealthy too. But tofu itself is pretty nutritious. It's high in protein. It has a healthy source of fat. It can be fortified with calcium, and these are all good for us. So enjoy that tofu.
Mary Mackey is putting you on the spot. She wants to know, what does Dr. Vanita eat in a day?
Oh my goodness. Well, I will just share with you what I ate today, because honestly, I can't remember what I ate yesterday. So today I had something that I grew up eating in my childhood in India, and it may sound really strange, but I had pita bread toasted with eggplant curry. This is something we used to eat growing up in my grandmother's house, and I was just craving it. I went for it. And then for lunch, I have to think now what I ate. Oh, for lunch, I had brown rice with lentil soup and watermelon. And for dinner, I'm planning to have a split pea soup with sweet potatoes and a slice of whole grain bread. And for dessert, I think I might make the banana ice cream, one of my favorite desserts of all time.
Oh, and so easy to make too.
Yeah.
It's so easy to make. It's amazing. Time for just a couple of more here. Catherine on YouTube. Is it possible to have a diet that is too low in fat? I've heard that could affect hormones.
Yeah. So we need to have some fat in our diet, because we need to get those essential fatty acids in. But we only need about 10% of our calories to come from fat. So as long as we're getting some form of nuts or seeds or avocado or olives in our diet on a daily basis, we'll be fine. But then things like tofu also naturally have some fat in them. So for most people, it's unlikely that they would end up with too little fat. It's usually the opposite that's more common. But it is important to not completely avoid those high fat foods, because we do need to get those essential fatty acids.
Jessica, YouTube. How about potatoes? Are sweet and regular potatoes okay?
Absolutely. Potatoes are great. It's really what we do to them. So even white potatoes are great. I recommend not peeling them. Eat the skin, because the skin is full of nutrients and protein. The issue has always been what we did to potatoes. When we make French fries, or when we make chips, or when we put a dollop of sour cream or melted cheese on it, that's what made the potato unhealthy. But potato by itself is great. Sweet potatoes are great. One of my favorites are Japanese sweet potatoes. I just stick them in the oven. They come out and they are super sweet, and they're like almost caramelized like a candy, just great by themselves.
All right, final question comes to us from Deborah on Facebook. I've heard older people need a greater amount of protein, even for those eating a plant-based diet. Could legumes be part of this?
Oh, legumes are great. So legumes are a great source of protein. Legumes are all those hard beans and lentils, and they're roughly 20 to 50% of the calories from those are protein, depending on the legume. So for example, soybeans are 50% protein. Chickpeas or kidney beans, black beans, they're roughly about 30% protein. So legumes should be a part of our diet every day. Try to get at least a cup of legumes, if not 2 cups a day. They're also very hearty and satiating.
All right. If we didn't get to your question today, don't worry. Keep on posting it in the comments section. We answer questions every single day on the show. So we do have that archive and we pull stuff out of the mailbag all the time. So keep on posting it and we will try to get you an answer on an upcoming episode. Dr. Rahman, I wanted to check in with you before we wrap things up to see how things are going over at the Barnard Medical Center. I think that maybe if someone wants to ask you a question privately, making an appointment to see you there would be a great option.
Yeah. Thanks for asking that, Chuck. We are seeing patients via telehealth, much like how you and I are speaking today. And it's really been just a wonderful and rewarding experience for me, and I think for our patients too, because everyone is concerned about coming into the doctor's office. They want to minimize exposure. And fortunately, the majority of issues we can take care of remotely. We can examine them, we can order labs, we can prescribe medications, we can put in referrals. So it's not that different from coming in person, except it's probably faster and easier for the patients.
And if you want to make your appointment today, head over to barnardmedical.org, or you can pick up the phone. Do it old school. 202-527-7500 is the number to call. Again, 202-527-7500 is the phone number, and barnardmedical.org is the website. Here's the rundown. New patients are being accepted in California, New York, Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia, Missouri, Arizona, Colorado, Massachusetts, and Kentucky. If you live in any of those locations, make your appointment today. And I know, Dr. Rahman, you guys are also working on expanding, coming to new states all of the time. So stay tuned. If your state was not listed, it very well may be in the near future.
That's right, Chuck.
All right. And if you, my friend, are looking for foods to lower high blood pressure, well, head on over to Apple Podcast and look for the Exam Room Podcast by the Physicians Committee. Just today did a wonderful interview with dietitian Susan Levin, where we went over what we should and should not be eating in order to keep our blood pressure under control. It's amazing to me how much we can really control our numbers just by starting with a look at what is on our plate. So the good and the bad, the best foods, the worst foods for controlling high blood pressure. That is on today's Exam Room Podcast. So head over to Apple Podcast or wherever shows are available and hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to also leave a 5-star rating if you would be so kind. And tomorrow we will be back here on the show. It's going to be a huge episode. Dr. Neil Barnard will be back here on the Exam Room Live, and we're going to be joined by Dr. Jim Loomis as well. So this is going to be an enormous show. You should tune in noon Eastern right back here on Facebook and on YouTube tomorrow. Can't wait to see you then. But until then, it's going to wrap things up. So big thank you to Laura Anderson, our producer, our director, Emily Colon, and Donna Steele, our producer. Could not have done this without you guys. And a huge debt of gratitude also to Dr. Vanita Rahman. Make your appointment to see her over at the Barnard Medical Center. For everyone here at the Physicians Committee, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll. Thank you so very much for watching today. And until tomorrow, keep it plant-based.